What is up, guys? Rick is here, and today we're going to talk about the top 4 things Destiny's new 2016 raid needs to have. Now, Bungie has finally announced some new PvE-focused content coming to Destiny in 2016. Firstly, there's going to be a PvE-focused live update coming later in the spring. That's going to be something like the Festival of Lost or Sparrow Racing. Additionally, they said on top of that, there's going to be a large expansion coming near the end of 2016. Now, the fact that they said large expansion and that they purposely distinguished it from the live update really points towards the fact that they're bringing back the paid expansion model for this final Destiny DLC. It's going to be something like the Dark Below, or hopefully more close to the Taken King in terms of content, and with that will hopefully come a new raid. Now, although a new raid has not been officially confirmed, I can't even imagine a scenario where a new raid wouldn't be introduced in this large expansion. The community is begging for content to be added to Destiny, and I just cannot see them justifying not adding a new raid. So we can say that a new raid is almost certainly confirmed. However, remember that the new raid is going to have to be a little different this time around. Now you may say, well, why is that? Because in fairness to Bungie, all of the current raids, the Vault of Glass, Crota's End, and King's Fall have all been very well designed, and the community has overall really enjoyed these pieces of content. Although some people have their favorites, all of them have been pretty well received. However, it's important to remember that this time, with this raid, they're gonna have to step their game up, because this time they're not just giving something to people so that they will continue to play. This time, they're giving something to people to bring them back to play, to give people a reason to play who currently are not playing Destiny. Many Destiny players have left the game because they've been simply unhappy with what Bungie has been doing as of late. So again, they're really going to have to step their game up, and that's why we're talking about the top 4 things that will really help this raid be a fantastic piece of content and differentiate itself from the other 3 raids. Now, the first thing we need is new enemies with a new setting. We've had the Vex and we've had the Hive twice. It's time to move on. Now, although Fallen is an option, Fallen were the focus of the House of Wolves DLC, so we've kind of got to know them quite well. I think what most people would love to see is a Cabal focus raid. We really haven't had too much of a Cabal focus in any of the DLCs. And story-wise, it would make sense. In fact, during some of the strikes available in the Taken King, during the Brothers strike where you take down 2 Cabal leaders, they actually send a distress signal to the Cabal command. So the Cabal command, the larger Cabal fleet, is on its way. Nothing could be a better justification for having a Cabal focus raid than the Cabal, for example, landing on Europa, Jupiter's moon covered in ice, and using it as a staging ground to launch an invasion to the rest of the solar system. You have to go to Europa, infiltrate it, and kill the Cabal commander, sending the fleet into disarray. Does that sound awesome to you? Because it sounds awesome to me. Additionally, we'd like to see some not only new places, as I brought up with Europa, somewhere we haven't been, but just some new settings. For example, having the focus of the last raid, King's Fall, on the Dreadnought. Although it was somewhat different, the Dreadnought was an entirely new area. You're fighting Hive, and everything's very Hive focused. Honestly, it kind of felt like you were fighting Hive on the moon. If you could take some of the areas from the Dreadnought, put them on the moon, you couldn't really tell the difference. I would love some sweeping vistas, some, zero gravity fights, something like that, some new settings really to distinguish this as a new raid. But that's more of a wish list thing. What they do really need to do is have a new enemy, and I really think they should focus this time on the Cabal. Now let's move on to number 2. Apart from needing a new enemy to focus on and a new setting on where to fight, there also needs to be a focus on new encounters for this raid. King's Fall really just was one boss fight after another, and although the boss fights were very well designed and each boss fight feels quite different, I would really love to see some new encounters that we really haven't had in any of the raids for this next one. For example, how about an encounter where you're being chased and you have to escape on your sparrows in a certain amount of time? If you're too slow, your teammates will be killed or picked off by whatever is chasing you. We really haven't had a sparrow racing or chasing sequence in the raids so far. Additionally, an idea that I came up with that I would really love is, let's say that you're in the raid and there's a part where you can't get past a certain point and your ghost is saying to you, you actually have to die, and if you do, I can respawn you, behind this door, but in the meantime, you've tripped the alarm and all these enemies are coming. Alright, so that's happening, and then it basically gives you the option to do a wave survival. So for this part, if all your teammates die, that's actually the objective. You'll all die, your ghost will teleport you and revive you on the other side of the door, and you continue with the raid. However, you can choose and fight, and the further you fight, more and more enemies are going to spawn. It's going to get harder and harder, and the longer you survive and fight those enemies, the better loot you're actually going to get. So it's kind of like an optional wave survival built into the raid. Why not? That sounds like a pretty sweet idea to me. Now, although they don't have to use these specific examples, again, it's a focus on something we haven't done before, new encounters, and although boss fights are certainly warranted and I would love and expect to see some boss fights in the new raid, I would also love to see some more different things like I just brought up. Now let's move on. The third thing that Bungie needs to do to make this new raid fantastic is to keep it glitch free. Now this is a huge factor, and it's something that Bungie frankly has not been emphasizing as much as they should. To give you guys a great example, only days ago I was streaming on King's Fall. This is a raid that's been out for months, and we were encountering glitches. What would happen is, during the stream, and anyone who was watching can vouch for me, we would detonate all the orbs on Oryx, and they just wouldn't register. Like, we would do everything right. All the mechanics were done properly. We would detonate the orbs, and Oryx would take no damage. This is a debilitating thing, and we actually had to wipe 2 times because this kept happening. And even during our successful run, we hit every single orb. We detonated every single orb. There was never an orb that was missed, and we still had to run it 5 times. That makes no sense. And the important thing about this is that I was on the stream, obviously I was the one streaming, and I also had Axis Wowzer, who is a person I play with all the time. He was on the stream with me, kind of as my designated teammate, helping me get other people who weren't as experienced through the raid. Both of us have thousands of hours on Destiny. Thousands. And we were having trouble, and we were getting frustrated, and we were having to wipe because of these glitches. And this is with us, some of the most experienced players out there. Imagine if you get 6 fresh Guardians who just bought the game, they all get together, they're a group of friends, and they're doing the raid for the first time, and they're encountering these glitches. Can you imagine how frustrating it is for them? They're doing everything right, and the game is working against them? That is absolutely absurd. And because the raids are so important, because they're so heavily played, because they are the de facto endgame content, Bungie needs to go out of its way to make sure that the raids are glitch free. There needs to be a substantial amount of resources put into making sure the raids are running smoothly at every single point in its lifespan. Now let's move on to the last factor, and I believe the most important factor in making this new raid fantastic, and this 4th factor is simply more loot, better loot. Loot is the single most important factor in what makes people play Destiny. Honestly, think about it. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What would you say if a new raid was added into Destiny, but there was no rewards? No rewards tied to it, no weapons, no armor. How much would you play? Frankly, for me, like 4 or 5 times, I'd probably never bother with it again. Some people even less. Some people wouldn't even bother. Although some people may play it more, I think what I'm trying to point out to you guys is that loot is what makes what gives us the reason to play the endgame content. And so having more loot and having better loot is something that Bungie really needs to focus on. Designing a fun raid is one thing, but you also have to give people a reason to play, and the reason to play in the loot-based game that is Destiny is the loot. There needs to be more of it. Frankly, when we're talking about King's Fall, it didn't even have a raid sidearm or a raid melee weapon. Why not? Those are two gun types in the game that there could have totally been raid versions of. The new raid needs to have a raid weapon of every single weapon variety, no questions asked. Additionally, I would love to see some differentiation within the loot that we're getting. It's kind of disappointing that you're getting a scout rifle or an auto rifle or all of the guns that have damages that other guns have. And so you have problems like the Anguish of Dryston, which is the King's Fall auto rifle. And it has a tremendous amount of recoil, but it does the same damage as other guns like the Suros ARI-45, which have almost no recoil. So what happens is you have these end game rewards, like you get a hallowed 320 Anguish of Dryston, and you're hyped up, except for you use it and you realize, wow, this is complete crap. And that's the problem. You have these special raid rewards that are doing the same damage and are acting pretty much the same as a lot of the other weapons in the game. Although they do have different perks and spawn with a higher light level, both of which I think are great things, I would love a little bit of more differentiating factors to really distinguish them. The raid auto rifle should do different damage, for example, than what you can find in other auto rifles in the game. Just more, again, distinguishing factors. In addition, there was only one exotic, the Touch of Malice, that was designated to King's Fall, and one exotic designated to all of the other raids, for example. There should be more. Could you imagine how much more you would have played King's Fall, for example, if there was another exotic tied to the Golgroth fight? Like it was a random drop on the Golgroth fight if you could get another exotic? Or even another random exotic that would just randomly dropped when you killed Oryx. And on top of that, there was the whole Touch of Malice quest. Just adding more desirable loot will give people more of a reason to play and keep on playing. So, those are my 4 things that I think the new 2016 raid needs to have. A new setting with a new enemy, hopefully the Cabal. Some new mechanics and new encounters that we haven't seen before. A focus to keep this raid glitch free, and lastly, more loot, better loot. That's what keeps us playing, that's what keeps people willing to tolerate the grind. Now that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, and if you agree with what I said in this video, please remember to rate and share this video so that hopefully Bungie will see it. Now additionally, if you want to see more Destiny content, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can follow as well. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.